I'm Samantha Lee, and I'd like to introduce you to Vinviro. Now, before I dive into what Vinviro actually is, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on myself pre-PGC and post-PGC. If you're wondering, the answer is not that I got a haircut. Last year, with my friends, I began the environmental club at my school, but honestly, I did feel like a fraud. I came into PGC hoping that I could really consolidate my knowledge about these issues and then be able to pass this knowledge and these skills on to others in my community. I can now proudly say that I do have a broader picture of all the issues that are impacting us presently, as well as my role in combating them. And I've started to also attune my brain to thinking through an environmental lens, in that I'm constantly considering the impact of my actions on the environment. So, some core realizations from the journey. Number one, everything is intertwined with climate justice, whether that's on a personal level or a global level. It's all part of the cycle that really needs to be fixed. Second of all, something that I think is really heavily emphasized throughout PGC, power to the youth. I mean, getting to know the other finalists, despite nationality, ethnicity, language, gender identity, we're really all here because we want to fight for change and make a better planet. And number three is that we all start somewhere. There's this quote that I really resonate with, and that is, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." I wouldn't really consider myself a extroverted or risk-taking person, but wading into unfamiliar territory and taking those first steps was so important to me. So the question from there on out was, how can I take what I've learned and apply it to a climate action project? When I was learning about food waste and food insecurity, I really reflected on where I see these issues, not only in my community, but communities around me, as well as the people that I know that are personally affected. In my school district, 66.7% of all students are socioeconomically disadvantaged, which means that they are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Compare this to a Bay Area mean of 41.3%. This is kind of how I knew that I really wanted to center my project around food and food insecurity. So in 2020, it's really hard for us to talk about anything without talking about COVID, right? Large corporations like Amazon not only can withstand the COVID crisis, but profit from it. Meanwhile, in the Bay Area, 2,900 local businesses are permanently closed. That's 2,900 livelihoods and dreams that have been impacted. If y'all have ever heard of something called Universal Basic Income, it is a program that provides citizens with a set amount of money for a set amount of time. In September, I watched a video about Gyeonggi Province in South Korea that created a program called Gyeonggi Pay. The money from UBI is often spent on basic necessities like bills, but for Gyeonggi Pay, it was about citizens spending money for local businesses. So for the business, they saw increase in sales, they brought in new customers, and they were really able to create buzz around these stores. And for the consumers, they got to know restaurants in their neighborhood or other businesses that they had not really frequented before. This brings me to Venviro. I combined these two components of what I wanted to do and created a program where students are provided with semesterly allowances to be spent at local businesses and eateries that commit themselves to incorporating sustainable practices and environmental education in their operations. To start, students would be given around $50, and this would be spent in the form of a card, much like a school lunch card. Of course, this is subject to change if I find that it is not feasible later on. This can only be used at participating local businesses. Unfortunately for my classmates, 7-Eleven is not a local business, and leftover money at the end of the semester cannot be spent. Participating businesses will commit to implementing environmentally conscious practices and educating students that visit, of course, in accordance with COVID restrictions. This could be anything from switching to sustainable packaging, to creating a flaws in shopping guide, to using DIY cleaning products, just little things that make an impact. So the desired impacts for our businesses are to recognize the importance of sustainability, become conscious about what they're marketing, and of course, transitioning to one or more eco-friendly practices. For communities, it is to generate interest around local businesses, revitalize the larger local economy, and build relationships between citizens. Now, as for students, the main goal is food literacy. Food insecurity and food apartheid are largely systemic issues, but food literacy is a huge part of breaking that cycle, especially for marginalized communities. Part of food insecurity means that many are not well equipped to understand eating healthy and making good food decisions. During PGC, I really learned about how we can change our everyday actions to mitigate our impact on the environment, but money is always a roadblock. I mean, for me personally, there are certain lifestyle changes that I cannot make simply because it's not practical money wise. So, having this extra money to spend specifically on food means that students can better understand the food production system, gain knowledge about the impact of their food choices on their health, community, environment, and economy, and also empower themselves to make choices and really develop a healthy relationship with food. Now, we can track the impact in two ways by student surveys, 3 surveys prior to, midway, and after the program, just assessing feelings about personal growth, knowledge gained, and the interest in the businesses, and the hard numbers through data. We can track how much students spend and where, and also increases in engagement or sales in businesses. Now, my action plan is to begin reaching out to my school's administration in December, as well as doing outreach to connect with businesses that might be interested. In January, we would identify projects for these businesses and find interested participants. I would like to note that if my school's administration does not think that this is something that can be enacted on campus, then I can always think about transitioning it to a program that's off campus, but still community based. In February, we would take initial data and set up the stipend system. And from March to June, we would monitor progress and provide support throughout for both participants and businesses. And June would just be a time of reflection, collecting data, and looking at next steps for this program. Now, my goals, first and foremost, are to connect to 5 to 10 local businesses that really represent the diversity of San Leandro. Next would be to provide stipends for 20 participants. Of course, this number will be a lot lower in the beginning, just as a test run. Create dialogue around sustainability and food literacy on campus, even virtually. Expand the program using the kind of relationships that I have made throughout PGC. Generate funding, whether that is through outside grants or fundraisers. And of course, if this program is successful, to bring it to other schools or other parts of the Bay. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.